Hey everyone, welcome back to our series on Palestinian Arabic. After the packed last video, I figured we could talk about something not too complicated, but very important, which is talking about cause and effect. Mainly how to say because, since there's like a couple of different ways with different connotations, and it does work a little bit differently than in Fusha. Okay, so first of all, let's start with what we already know. In our video about question words, we went over the words ish and shu, right? Both meaning what. And I told you that if you add the letter lam, meaning for, to ish, then leish would mean literally for what, but it actually, of course, it means why. And I also mentioned that some people even cut off the sheen and just say le. So that's just another pronunciation of the word meaning why. So that's why. Okay, so but how do we answer that, right? How do we say because? Well, the same way that you have ish and leish, what and for what, meaning why, you have the words inno and li'anno. First of all, the word inno, let's do that one first. It's a relative pronoun, basically meaning that. But by relative pronoun, I mean it's not like the article that, as in like that chair or I like that. No. It's that as in I know that he's busy, which in Arabic would be ba'arif inno mashghul. So it's pretty much just like English, actually. It's a word used to refer to some kind of fact or situation to connect sentences in a way. So you have he's busy, and then it becomes like the object of another sentence. So I know that he's busy. You might be wondering though, if inno just means that, how does that sentence mean I know that he's busy, rather than just I know that busy? Because there's no actual pronoun there, right? Well, you may have noticed that inno ends with this ha, right? So that's actually the ha as in the suffix for huwa. So the whole word inno actually already means that he, rather than just that. That said though, in Ammiya there's no inno without the suffix. So it's also just the general word for that, as well as that he. But that's also because remember that huwa could also mean it. So for example, if I wanted to say, I know that the sky is blue, or whatever, I would say inno because I know that it is blue, right? So inno is a very important word, and I'm sure I'll bring it up again in future videos, so it's worth learning it now too. And even though inno is the default, I will say that you can actually replace the h suffix with another pronoun suffix, if applicable. The only thing is that you always have to have a suffix, no matter what it is. There just has to be one. So if I wanted to say, for example, you know that I'm busy, I could say, Enta arif inni mashghul. So here, the inno is actually inni, meaning that I, as in you know that I am busy. So you can say inni, innak, inno, inha, etc. And I definitely know that at first it can be tricky to get used to adding the right suffix to inno. But listen again, inno is the default. And I've mentioned here and there over the course of these videos that native speakers don't necessarily pay much attention to which words are referring to what sometimes. So they'll often make like mistakes by defaulting to huwa, but then correcting themselves by saying, for example, like ba'arif inno enta mashghul. Here it's actually more similar to English because it's like the word inno, even though it has a suffix, has just become a neutral that, and then the whole pronoun is used after. So I'm just saying, don't stress about remembering to use the exact correct suffixes each time, but do be aware of the different conjugations, so to speak, of inno. Okay, moving on. So inno by itself means that, right? But when you add the lam to get li'anno, can you guess what it means? It literally means for that, but really, of course, it means because. So li'anno is the general word for because. So for example, ليش نمت متأخر امبارح? Why did you sleep late last night? لأنه كان معي كتير وجبات, because I had a lot of homework. So it's pretty straightforward. Honestly, I already mentioned the only thing there is to know, which is that the suffix could potentially change depending on who you're talking about. So in the last sentence, it's actually لأنه, because you're actually referring to the homework. It's just a matter of how Arabic possession works. And if you're unfamiliar with that, just check out my video on possession in Arabic, because I mentioned all that. But anyway, if I wanted to answer instead, for example, because I was busy, then I'm talking about myself. So it could be لأني كنت مشغول. But again, same thing as with inno. You can just say لأنه كنت مشغول. It's totally fine to use the neutral لأنه, I guess you would call it. Especially because the kunt is conjugate for ana already. So it's clear that I'm speaking about myself. But again, if you were going to say that sentence in the present, so لأنه مشغول, well, that just means because he's busy. So just remember to clarify by saying لأنه أنا مشغول. Whereas in the past tense, since the verb is already conjugated, the pronoun isn't necessary. Okay, the last pair of words that I want to cover today are actually pretty simple. First we have the word ashan, which is one of my favorite words because it's so versatile, so you can kind of use it when in doubt. Note though that there's a couple of different pronunciations and spellings that I've seen, but personally I've only actually heard and said ashan. Anyway, technically the primary function of the word is to say because of. So similar to bisabab in Fusha, if you're familiar with that. So for example, I was late because of the traffic. Notice that if you said لأنه here, it would be an incomplete sentence. As if I said in English, I was late because the traffic did what, you know? So you'd use عشان here to mean because of. So it would be أنا كنت متأخر عشان الأزمة. Another related use of عشان is to say in order to. The meaning isn't even really that different, but in English, because of and in order to are two separate expressions, but in Arabic the same one is used. So for example, if you ask me ليش تعلمت العربي, why did you learn Arabic, I could use لأنه in a sentence like لأنه اللغة كتير حلوة. But that's just because I'm giving like a random fact rather than stating a purpose, right? So to express a purpose, what you have to do is you use عشان almost like as an auxiliary verb. So basically after عشان, you attach the verb, whatever action was your purpose, in the subjunctive form. So the present tense just without the be. So let's say I learned Arabic in order to work somewhere. So that's my verb, right? So بشتغل, which is in the present tense. So the subjunctive is أشتغل. So basically the answer could just be عشان أشتغل بالأردن, in order to work in Jordan, So based on that, one extremely useful expression too is عشان هيك. I think I spoke about hik already in a really early video, but it's like saying like that or that way. It doesn't translate very well, but it's one of the most common words you see all the time, including in this expression. So you might translate عشان هيك rather literally as because of that. Or a more notional translation would be like that's why. Super, super useful, and again, very common. So you can say عشان هيك نمت بدري لأني كتير مشغول اليوم. That's why I went to bed early, because I'm so busy today. And I guess I wanted to get good sleep beforehand. I don't know. Or, you know, عشان هيك عم بحكي لك إنه da da da. That's why I'm telling you that da 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 da. You can see, you know, already that I'm using several of the words I brought up today, like لأنه and all that, because they really are so necessary in any conversation. So I figured I would make a video. So basically, in summary, if عشان is followed by a noun, for example, you're saying because of X, something. But if it's followed by a verb, the meaning is more like in order to do X. So as you can see, it's very versatile, and the reason I said you can use it when in doubt is because you can get away with using it even instead of لأنه. So you might say the most proper form to express like a cause would be to use لأنه with the proper suffix. To say, for example, لأني مشغول, because I'm busy. But we've established that لأنه أنا مشغول is pretty much fine too. And basically you can use عشان here too, instead of the neutral لأنه. So you can say عشان أنا مشغول, and it means the same thing. I'd still say that لأنه with the suffix is technically, with the appropriate suffix, is technically the most correct form, but in reality you'll hear the last two as well, so there's really nothing wrong with using them that way. And that's why you can really use عشان when in doubt. The last word for today is an interesting one that I'll talk about more some other time, but I'll mention it now as the sort of opposite of عشان, and that's the word بلاش. Again, it has other uses, but in the same way you use عشان to say in order to, you can use بلاش to mean so as not to, or in order to not do something. That's why I'm saying it's kind of like the opposite of عشان. So again, you attach the subjunctive after بلاش to say, for example, بدرس الأفعال كل يوم بلاش انساها. I study the verbs every day so as to not forget them, or in order to not forget them. It's kind of a dumb sentence, but you get the idea. So that's it, that's بلاش. Hey, so I was actually done with the video, but then it occurred to me that I could mention at this time another really useful word, because we're talking about cause and effect, right? So عشان هيك is useful to expressing effects, right? I mean, I guess, like, that's why, you know, I did something. Sort of like the opposite of لأنه. There's actually a really useful, it's not even a word, but there's a little expression that you use to say the equivalent of the English word so. So in the way that, there I said it, in the way that in English you say, you know, I was hungry so I ate. This really quick little interjection. There's something just like it in Arabic, and it is the letter fa, and it's just pronounced fa. You don't even see it by itself very much, although sometimes you do. Oftentimes it's just attached to everything that's going to come after. So I was hungry so I ate, you know, that would be كنت جعان فأكلت. So you just, I mean, you could write it separately in this case maybe, but again, many people just put it as a suffix. I do that too, because again, it's just like a little tiny interjection. It's barely really even a word. And that is fa, and that's another way of you know, instead of saying عشان هيك, which is a whole like, and that is why I ate. Okay, well, or just use fa, and that's just like, so I ate. That's fa. And believe it or not, that's all I have for you this time. Such a short video, I can hardly believe it. Stay tuned, because we're finally going to talk about the other verb forms, since we've just done form 1 thus far. But don't worry, after everything we've talked about already, it's going to be a total breeze. And I'll see you then. اهلا حبايبي، شكرا للجماعة اللي بيحضروا القناة. اذا بدكم تكملوا تشوفوا هالفيديوز اعملوا سبسكرايب، واذا شفتوني مؤخرا تفضلوا روحوا شوفوا الفيديوز الماضية بالبلاي ليست. وتذكروا اني عملت مصادر لتعليم اللهجة الفلسطينية، بتقدروا تلاقوه بالموقع تبعي اللي مكتوب تحت بالدسكريبشن. وبشوفكم المرة الجاية.